Okay, Dave, you can pray for us this morning, please.
Dear Father God, Almighty, Creator of heaven and earth, before we embark on this journey into your word, we are in need of your Holy Spirit to open our minds and our hearts. I also pray, dear Father, that you'll give us insight into your will, a greater depth into who you are, and Father God, what you are about to accomplish in our lifetimes and in the near future. I pray all these things, and I thank you, Lord, for hearing our prayer, not because of any worthiness of and in of ourselves, but only because of Jesus Christ, who is and who was and who is to come.
Amen. Okay, Malachi was the verse you had to read again. And it's a very interesting, people always refer to the book of Malachi, particularly when it comes to tithing. It's known as a tithing chapter, but yet, if you really look at it, it's one of the most powerful, what we call minor prophets. Not minor because he didn't have much to, it wasn't powerful, but it's a very short book. It's a small book. It only consists of 4 chapters. But you'll see Malachi chapter 3 verse 1, you had to read further down, but I want to start just with verse 1. Verse 1 says, "See, I will send my messenger who will prepare the way before me. Then suddenly the Lord you are seeking will come to his temple. The messenger of the covenant whom you desire will come, says the Lord Almighty." Now it's interesting there that this particular writing, when the Pharisees studied this, they studied it in reference to the first coming, which is very important, but it has more applicable application to the second coming. Okay, I will explain that just now. But it says that what we pick up here, and which is important for us to understand, is that it says a messenger will be sent ahead, and the objective of that messenger will be to prepare a people for the coming of Christ. Now, the fulfillment of this, when John is asked, "Are you the one that we were waiting for?" He says, "No, I'm the voice of the one crying out in the wilderness." He quotes a section of scripture, and it almost sounds like this piece of Malachi, but it's not Malachi's. It's found in Isaiah. And it's very important. Well, let's just have a look at that. Keep your finger there in Malachi, because I want you to understand again that what we realized last week is that God is still the one that is saving us. Go with me to John chapter 1, and you'll see there I want you to look at from verse 19. John gives this particular testimony. People ask him, "Are you the one that we have been looking for, the Christ?" And he says, in verse 20, he says, he confesses quite freely, "I am not the Christ." Very clear. He makes it adamant that people understand. Then they say, "Who are you? Are you Elijah then?" Because you remember Elijah hadn't died, he was taken up. And it's interesting that they ask him if you're Elijah, because you see, Elijah, if we understand the writings of God's word, was a person who got people to know the true God. Remember the story of Mount Carmel, where we have Elijah and the Baal prophets. And when the people ask, who's the true God, the Baal prophets do their little dance and they do the whole thing, but no fire comes down from heaven. And then finally, Elijah does his simple prayer, and God responds to his prayer, and everybody acknowledges that the God of Elijah is the one. And so in some sense, Elijah prepares the way for God's intervention. And so when they ask him, "Are you Elijah?" they are actually asking a very important question. Are you the one then that is, you're not Elijah, but what is your role? What is your purpose? Now we have, when we study Matthew, we have very clearly revealed to us about the calling of John the Baptist. How that his mother Elizabeth was approached and said that, the father was approached while he was in office. He was actually doing his duties in the church, if I could put it that way. And while he was in the church, the same angel that approached Mary approaches him and says to him, you're going to have a son. Your wife's going to bear a son, and you must give him the name John. And he's going to be used particularly by God for a purpose. And so here we see, and I want you to notice this here. You know, the interesting thing, just to answer the kind of question you asked just now, Craig, and that is that we have a story of John the Baptist here. Very similar to that of Christ, who was also set aside from birth. And so we have some interesting parallelisms in order to try and identify what Christ's life could have been like. You understand? But I want you to see here that he then says, I ask him, but who are you? He says, I'm not Elijah. He said, I'm not. And then, are you the prophet? Because now in Deuteronomy, the people of God were promised that a prophet would come. And not just any old prophet, the prophet, which was again one of the titles of Christ. And he says, no. He answers very clearly, not that. Then they ask him, but who are you then? Give us an answer about yourself. And then he says, I am the voice of one calling in the desert, make straight the way for the Lord. Do you understand? And you'll notice very similar. Did you see the similarity of the wording there? But it's found, this section is taken out of Isaiah chapter 40. You understand? That he uses to identify that he's the one preparing the way for the Lord. Whereas, now go back with me to Malachi. And Malachi talks about a messenger that would come. And again, the thought is, what is this messenger all about? And he is one who's going to do a work similar to that of Elijah, similar to that of John the Baptist, that he's going to be a messenger who's going to warn the people or prepare the people for the Messianic, well, not for the Messianic coming, for the second coming.
That must have been pretty confusing for the people of that day.
Quite correct. And confusing to us also. It's very interesting that in Matthew 24, Christ talks about both times, but because he doesn't say, I'm talking about this time, and then also, hey, listen, I'm talking about this time, it's up to the student who's studying God's word to be able to go and find it. Something that I must tell you about God's word, it's really very clear once you start putting the dots correctly. But if you fail somewhere along the line and you connect from one dot to another one and it wasn't the link, it's the same as a puzzle. When you push a puzzle piece in, I don't know if you've ever had these puzzles where they don't have edges. And we used to enjoy doing puzzling, and they all look like a lizard. They cut out exactly the same. And you know, you can put one in and it looks like it fits there, but later on when you find out it doesn't fit there, and you don't know which one it was, you almost have to dismantle the whole thing and start again and work through the whole thing. And there's a problem. People sometimes take certain scriptures and they will move from one link, and this is what's happened here, is that when the people approached the Word of God and they were referring to this particular message when the Pharisees and Sadducees were studying it, they were applying this to their time where it was not applicable to their time. It was actually talking more of the second coming. And so it's very important for us to be able to, and I think you must understand this also, most of us sitting around the table here aren't schooled in understanding this. You weren't given the tools to measure. It's like if I had to go to Garth and ask him, how do I prepare a bacon and eggs, or what? Okay, he wants to make a very, how do you prepare that? I can't even say the word. How do you prepare that? It's like, my attempt compared to his, I will really get the salt in the wrong place and the mixture will all be wrong. Because I don't have the tools. I haven't been given, I haven't been schooled. And he didn't just get it. Somebody schooled him, and the same with us. We have to be schooled in it. And I believe that there's a lot of people who I call lay members who are attempting to study the Word according to the information that they have, maybe that they got out of their Sunday school or out of even the church or out of even from the minister. And sometimes the minister might call a group of people together and today we are going to study this Word. And they listen to what the minister says, but they've never been given the basic principles of how to study the Word. Now, I mean this very strongly. I find a lot of people standing up who hold positions of leadership as ministers who say things that are not biblical. And yet they will come and say, I got that out of the Word, and they'll give it to you. But if you really take it correctly, it's distorted the Word. It's very important to understand that God recognizes that He needs to send somebody or a group of people with a message. Now, initially,
sorry to interrupt you, Billy, but my question, maybe to put it into more simpler terms, is why has this whole thing not been more simplified?
I'm going to show you the simplicity of it now.
You know, the simplicity of give your life to Christ, confess your sins to Him, and
well,
your way home. But
it has always been simple. The problem is
getting people to believe in
yes,
that
but
always seems to be the challenge.
let me come back to it. Let me tell you why it's happened. First of all, God, when He saw planet Earth's dilemma, He approached individuals to try and do the work. Like we get an example, Noah. But he really tried hard with Noah. Then finally, he got hold of Abraham. And finally, God calls a nation, a group of people, saying, okay, I couldn't get my example revealed in those people. Now let me try at least a nation. And I mean, a nation who is supposed to be under God's rule will reveal what it's like to be under His rule. I mean, it's like in South Africa. If you're in South Africa, you drive on the wrong side of the road, according to the Americans. We drive on the left-hand side, they drive on the right. But if you're in South Africa, that's the rule. Now, God says, you are my people and I'm your God. And He takes time to take His finger, push it into rock, and write down what His laws are for them. It's not for other people initially. He's saying, I want the world, the universe, the rest of mankind to see this is the kind of people I want you to be. And He uses the Jewish nation. But the problem with the Jewish nation, like many of us, and I'm going to come even now, I'm going to break away from that, we have lots of different churches. And each church now is trying to say, well, if you don't belong to my church, you can't have salvation. And what creeps into it is that they start clouding the truth, the simplicity of truth, with their thoughts and their things as to what you should do. And that's why when Christ comes to the Jewish nation, His people, He refers to them. I gave you all the information. I'm coming back to you. They didn't know Him. And He walks into the temple, which was the pinnacle or the clearest of revelations of God. I'm actually going to be touching on that today. The temple was the place where God was fully revealed. But what happened is that people started to add stuff to it. And that's why you find Christ in the beginning of His ministry walking into the temple and He sees them doing things and He gets angry. He says, you've made my house, which was simply a house of prayer, and you've made it into a den of thieves. Now, let's work with this because I want to go on. And I want to say this, Chris. I recognize very strongly, and I want you to understand this, that one of the things we need to understand is that when we know what is truth, we become responsible to that truth. You understand? You can't now say, well, it's still that man's responsibility. Because when you know, and it's clear to you, you become the custodian of that truth. Now, the best place to start with a custodian of the truth is with your family. God is saying here, I'm going to send a messenger who's going to prepare the way. John the Baptist came to say what God wanted. I mean, when Jesus came, He said, behold, the Lamb of God. I mean, there was Pharisees and Sadducees and Jews and everybody. Not one of them recognized Him. So we need to, and I'm going to say this very boldly, you need teachers to understand the word. So let's come back to your thing. It's true and it's terrible. The word Babylon means or has its original root in the word confusion. The world is in confusion regarding God. The world is in confusion regarding how He's going to do His work. The world is in confusion as to what He's going to come like or when He's going to come. The world was in confusion about His first coming, so much so that when He actually came, they didn't even know Him. And they refused to listen to somebody. Yes.
We need to understand that Satan revels in the confusion of God's word.
That's correct.
How do we end up with so many churches, so many disparities in Christian life? Satan is very, very active in confusing us so that we will depart from God's ways.
Yes. Now I want to come back to something. Let's stick with what we're doing here. It says, see, I will. It doesn't say you will. God is very clear, I will. Now I'm going to make this very clear to you. God will not be able to come in His second coming until confusion has been set aside. Did you hear what I just said now? While the world is in confusion, He cannot come.
Jeez, that seems to me like it's never going to happen.
But now, this is what we're talking about when it comes to the 7 trumpets. The 7 trumpets are to blow a distinct sound. And let me just show you this again. Go with me to Corinthians. I just want to show you the reality of it. When we talk about it, 1 Corinthians 14. I want you to look at verse 6. Now, brothers, if I come to you and speak in tongues, what good will I be to you unless I bring you some revelation or knowledge of, or prophecy or word of instruction? Now, he's saying something very clear here. I can speak to you in a language that you can understand, but unless I'm giving you information, I'm just talking. But then he goes further. Even in the case of lifeless things that make sounds. Listen why I'm using this. Have you, any of you ever gone to a piano and played it? No, you go and you plunk, 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 plunk. What does it sound like? Beethoven's whatever? Nothing. It's noise. So you can have an instrument, and I want to use it. The word is an instrument, and you can take it and make a lot of noise. And what is noise usually doing? It makes you irritated. It doesn't tell you anything. You can't enjoy it. It's actually, noise is bad news. Yes?
It's not constructive.
It's not constructive. You can't build on it. So he's saying, listen to the lifeless thing there. He says there, even in the case of lifeless things that make sounds, this is verse 7, such as the flute or harp. You see, he's talking about particular things. How will anyone know what tune is being played unless there is a distinction in the notes? Again, if the trumpet does not sound a clear call, who will get ready for battle? You see, again, the importance of knowing.
In a nutshell, what you're trying to say to us is that the 7 trumpets are blowing to give a clear distinction of what's happening.
And who's, again, God says, I will, go back to Malachi 3, I will send a messenger. Now, what are the angels? In the Greek, the word angel is angelos, which basically its interpretation is not angel, it's messenger. And if you look with me again at Revelation chapter 8, it says, go with me there, keeping your finger in Malachi still. Revelation chapter 8 says, verse 2, I saw the 7 angels who stand before God, and to them were given what? By whom?
God.
And he says, I will send my messengers. Now, the most incredible thing about it is that these messengers are blowing their trumpets now, but because none of us who are schooled in it are actually telling you what it's saying. And how will you know unless somebody is sent? So God is, I'm going to make this very clear, God cannot come until truth in its purity has been revealed again. Because how can you make a decision unless you know what is right? The first thing about wisdom is that there must be something clearly wrong and clearly right. But if it's grey, how do you make the decision? Babylon, Daniel chapter 1 teaches me something powerful about the condition of the world in the end. And that is that science and knowledge, technology, is recognized more the God of the world than the Word of God. If you want a solution to your problems, go to science and technology.
Google.
You understand? Whereas if you want to really know the truth, the word of Jesus himself says, thy word is truth. And then the word says the truth will set you free. And you will be free indeed. Now I believe that what we need to recognize, and I'm saying this very boldly, why I'm so keen that we get this information put out on YouTube is so that other people can hear what's happening here. Because, and I'm going to say it sounds very false, I feel very lonely. I'm telling you this, I really do read a lot. I also Google a lot. I go to movies to find out what people are thinking. And I find that it's very few people that are actually talking about really what's happening. The great controversy. Go with me to Revelation again. Let me show you something else. Revelation chapter 16. Listen to what it says there in verse 12. The sixth angel poured out his bowl on the great river Euphrates. Now the river Euphrates draws my attention back to Babylon. But anyway, and its waters were dried up to prepare the way for the kings from the east. It's so powerful here that we've seen things happening that happened in Daniel 1 that has relevance to us now. But the words aren't literal anymore, they're figurative, they're symbolical. But then it says, then I saw three evil spirits that looked like frogs. They came out of the mouth of the dragon, out of the mouth of the beast, out of the mouth of the false prophet. They are spirits of demons performing miracles, signs and wonders to go out to kings of the world to gather them for what day? Now that is usually referred to as a day that's going to happen in an event, but the day is already now. Because you see, the objective is the devil wants you as much as God wants you. So the battle that God is fighting, and you don't realize it, but we are, although we might not be in warfare with any other country at the particular moment, we are in warfare for the salvation of our souls. But most of us live as if that's not really happening. And we go about our daily work oblivious of the fact that our destinies are being decided by the very actions of our day. So let's get back. We've really gone off, and I don't want to go too far off again. Malachi chapter 3 says, then suddenly the Lord you are seeking. You see, it talks about things. First of all, if you don't seek, you won't find. I mean, I was a matric student who had studied science. It was and maths and everything. And I want to tell you something about maths and science and those kind of subjects, is that you can't find a solution unless you're really looking for it. It's not just going to fall in your lap. And I'm going to say this again to you. When I see the amount of time people spend to try and find out what's really going on compared to what the time spent in doing everything else, they're not really trying very hard to find out what's going on. They're really not. If we had to advertise that I'm going to be holding a presentation on events to tell you what's happening now, but there's a good movie out, which one will get the most people? Why? We should be serious about this. I mean, Tony and them can back me up on this. People come to me about their financial problems, but they want you to give them a solution, and then when you give it to them, they kind of feel it, and then they think they now know everything. They're not continuing to look. And I brought it out for a reason. Malachi. Let's come back to Malachi. One of the interesting things that I want to get at, it asks in verse 2, it says, but who can endure the day of his coming? You see, here it's talking about enduring the day of his coming. It's not referring to, you see, when the Messiah came, he clothed his divinity in humanity, and people could stand in his presence without worrying about dying. But here the question is asked, in this coming, who can stand? Now, it's a question that we all need to ask ourselves. Who can stand? Go with me to Psalm 24. And I want you to look at this. Now, Psalm 24 is actually a brilliant psalm again, and a lot of theologians refer to Psalm 24, and that comes after Psalm 23, if you know. And Psalm 23 is about
The Lord is my shepherd.
the Lord is my shepherd. Psalm 24 talks, and it's very interesting, it's almost the inauguration that some people say. Now, as you look at it, you can play around with two things here. Some people will take Psalm 24 and refer it to as the time when Christ, after being on earth and dying, was resurrected, and on his way home, he's accompanied by a group of angels. And as they approach the gates of heaven, the angels who are inside the heaven cry out, as it says there. Sorry, the angels come in, approaching the gate, cry out, "Lift up your heads, O ye gates, be ye lift up," verse 7, "you ancient doors, that the King of glory may come in." So now there's this brilliant announcement, "Open up the gates, let the King of glory come in." And then the people on the gates are crying out, "Who is this King of glory?" Now the question is really important question here. Who is this King of glory? The answer is given. The Lord strong and mighty. The Lord mighty in battle. Now, here we touch a word. It's talking about a battle. Now, the most amazing thing, Daniel chapter 12 says that at that time, when we're talking about our time, Michael will stand up and protect his people. Whenever you read about Michael, it's war. Who's this King of glory? The Lord mighty in battle. That means he's never lost a battle. Then the angels accompanying Christ say to the angels again, "Lift up your heads, O ye gates, and be ye lift up your everlasting doors, and let the King of glory come in." The question is asked again, who is this King of glory? And the answer is given, the Lord Almighty, he is the King of glory. Now it ends there, and we all say, wow, what a great thing. But I left something out there. Jump back to verse 3. Who may ascend the hill of the Lord? Who can stand in his holy place? Does that sound similar to what we've just read? Who can stand? Who can stand? Then the answer is given. He who has clean hands and a pure heart. So, back to Malachi. Very clear to understand that when God comes, the condition of God's people is that they should have pure hearts and clean hands. Which means that we should not be people who are in any way affiliated with evil, or with wrongdoing, or with unrighteousness. But we should be clothing ourselves with righteousness, with right doing. But now you'll see why this is so important, because you'll see here the question is asked, verse 2, who can stand when he appears? For he will be like a refiner's fire or a launderer's soap. He will sit as a refiner and purifier of silver. He will purify the Levites and refine them like gold and silver. Now to me this is so relevant. We were asking the question, who are the messengers? Now it's interesting that the Levites were the instruments in God's church to reveal the truth of the sanctuary. Now who is first being purified? Not the people outside. So somehow the ministers have to first be purified before you can be purified. There's an old saying that the spiritual level of a church will never rise higher than that of its shepherd. So I want to just move quickly now I want you to look at verse 6. It says, I, the Lord, do not change. And then there's some very interesting things that go in there, but I want to go to Revelation 8. And I have done this for a purpose to prepare you for quickly looking at Revelation 8. Now, already I want you to just confirm with me, Revelation 8, and when we talked about the first trumpet, is the trumpet that's blowing, that's preparing you, that's the messenger to you, is you're going to have lots of troubles. Just jump with me to Isaiah 30. And I want you to listen to what verse 19 says. Isaiah 30 verse 19. O people of Zion, again, God's people. O people of Zion, who live in Jerusalem, you will weep no more. Now that sounds very interesting again. Why are we weeping?
What verse was that?
Isaiah 30 verse 19. You will weep no more. Now the interesting thing here is God's word teaches me that because there is a lack of information, my people are going to ruin. Jesus weeps over Jerusalem and says, you are going to be burnt, you're going to be surrounded by your enemies, you're going to be destroyed, and he weeps. When the women are weeping for him as he's carrying the cross, he doesn't say, don't weep. He says, don't weep for me, but weep for yourselves and for your children. And what we pick up here is that we weep at this present moment because something's wrong. Then it said, but you will weep no more. How gracious he will be when you what? Cry for help. When you search for me. How gracious he will be. As soon as he hears, he will answer you. But then he says something that's so interesting. He says, although, now listen to this. Now you pray, Lord, please help me to understand what's going on here in my life. I'm so confused. And then God's answer comes in the most strangest of ways. It says that the Lord answers, although the Lord gives you, now he says, although he's answering you by giving you the bread of adversity and the water of affliction, your teachers will be hidden no more. With your own eyes you will see them. Now listen to what he's saying there. He's saying that when I answer you, I answer sometimes in a way that you didn't expect. It's like you pray, Lord, give me patience, and he puts you in situations where you have to exercise patience. And here he's saying, when you ask me, I will answer you. And sometimes the answer will come in the form of affliction, or it will come in the form of adversity. But if you really study that, you will find your teachers, and with your own eyes you will see them. And then it says further, if you look at this, it says, verse 21, whether you turn to the right, when you finally need to know which way you should go, you come to a T-junction, should I go left or should I go right? When you turn to the right or to the left, your ears will hear a voice behind you saying, this is the way, walk in it. It's powerful. God will never leave you to walk in darkness. But you really have to ask for it, for light. So, Revelation chapter 8. Now I'm going to just say something. We realize the bread of affliction, the water of adversity, which is referred to by the hailstones, is the way in which God is really talking to you. And he will always talk to you in the way in which you will understand. And you know, a problem to me is not a problem to Chris. You know, he's got the solution to the problem, so he hasn't got a problem. So God's not going to speak to Chris in the way he's speaking to me, because I don't have the solution to the problem. So he's going to speak to me that way. But to Chris, he's going to find out where his problems are, and he's going to approach him then. Now I want you to see this again. So we see all of this, and there is a reaction. The trees really take strain, and trees are referred to, I can show you so many examples, nations and things like that. And today I want to quickly jump to this one. Here we see a mountain all ablaze.
Is it not possible that we are thinking that God's going to come back in one foul swoop when we are ready and take everybody at the same time? But in actual fact, he's probably dealing with each and every person on this planet individually in their own time span. So
really brilliant.
Their hands are really...
Okay, and my answer is near, because when death comes, your time's up.
Yeah,
So...
we're ready there.
No, yes, but you've just said it. So individually, you better respond. If you're waiting for the nation to respond, then you better just keep on waiting.
Yeah.
You know, it's not going to happen. But when the individual, the word comes to you as an individual, you have to respond. God's not going to say, well, did the Jewish nation accept? No, he's going to say, did you as an individual? That's why even now, Jews who do not accept Jesus Christ as a Savior cannot be saved. Because as a whole, the Jewish nation rejected Christ. Okay.
I think that's very true. Craig has just said. Because a lot of churches say that we are the church. Come in and we will save you. It's not. God is working with us individually. I think if we accept that God is working with us individually, that not as a clump of people,
Now, when
we'll get a hell of a lot further. I think we'll start listening to God and not listening to
Exactly. That's very nice. I think we need to be... Look, and one thing I want to make very clear to you. The Holy Spirit was given to be the one that counsels you in truth. And Jesus makes it very clear. The Holy Spirit himself will give you no new words. He will only speak the words that Christ has already spoken. You understand? So, but let's come back to here. I want to get to this part because I really want to make it this. The mountain, which is all ablaze, without question, is whenever we refer to a mountain, there's two interpretations of it, but the mountain that's all ablaze, I can show you, is the mountain of God. Okay, there are references I can give to you. If you want to, you can go to Exodus chapter 19 and chapter 20, very clearly as God comes down to announce his kingdom to the Jewish nation. The mountain that he comes down trembles, it's all ablaze, and there's fire, and the people are so scared because of everything's going on. So, symbolically, what this mountain means is that the God of heaven is going to challenge the world. In what way? Now, it's all ablaze, that means in glory. Now, this to me is one of the most challenging ones when it comes to commerce and trade. Because, just look at there with me. It says there in the verse 8 of chapter 8, the second angel sounded his trumpet, and something like a huge mountain, all ablaze, was thrown into the sea. Now we have the sea there. A third of the sea turned into blood, a third of the living creatures in the sea died, and a third of the ships were destroyed. And that's the end of the message. Now remember, as I said to you, God has given each of these things out. What has he just said now? Now it says that a third of the sea turns to blood. Now I've done something I didn't do before. I actually divided the earth up. But a third can be a third of whatever. Okay? So we have I put 3 ships down, I put 3 fish down, and I put the sea, and it says a third of the sea turned to blood. A third of the ships were destroyed, and a third of the fishes died. Now what's this got to do with us? I mean, do you fish, Tony? I mean, is that your living?
No, my living.
So, what's it got to do with me? Now, let me show you something. Just jump with me quickly to Ezekiel. And Ezekiel, particularly now, just Ezekiel. I just got to find mine first. And I want you to look with me at Ezekiel chapter 27. And I want you to notice it's referring to a particular nation, Tyre. The word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, take up a lament concerning Tyre. Now remember, I said to you, the way in which we try and understand what God's doing is we will go back into history, find out what he did there to get attention of the people in a certain way, and then we go. Now listen to what it says there. Say to Tyre, situated in the gateway to the sea. Okay, now we have the certain things that come in that's common. Sea. Now just keep your finger there again and jump with me back to Revelation this time. And I want you to see something about what seas are. Revelation 17, verse 15. The angel said to me, the waters you saw where the prostitute sits are people, multitudes, nations, and languages. Okay, sorry, and then it's also, you'll see the relevance here. But we see the sea. So the sea here, where it says a third of the sea turns blood, that means it's going to affect, in a sense, a third of mankind. Okay? A third of the ships are going to be affected by it, and a third of the fish. Now, what are the ships? Now, listen to the story here about Tyre. Say to Tyre, situated at the gateway to the sea, merchants of people on many coasts. So what's the word that's just caught our attention there? Merchants. Now, in those days, what were boats used for?
Slaves.
Well, you talk about slaves, but basically before slaves was really, it was trade. How did they get things from one place to another place? They didn't have trains, they didn't have airplanes, they had boats. It says there further, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Now listen to the word, sovereign Lord. And here God is now almost saying, challenging the world, and he's putting his stamp down saying, I'm sovereign. You think you're sovereign, I'm sovereign. You think you know how to trade, I'm the one that lets you trade. Now listen to what he says. You say, O Tyre, I'm perfect in beauty. Your domain was on the high seas. Your builders brought you beauty to perfection, your beauty to perfection. They made all your timbers of pine trees from Sinai. They took a cedar from Lebanon to make a mast for you. Listen to what he's busy making. This is business. We're talking about established businesses. Your mast was made out of this. Of oaks from Bashan, they made you oars. Of cypress wood from the coast of Cyprus, they made your deck inlaid with ivory. And so here we get where God is saying, you were master craftsman in what you did. But then he says this. He goes on, he says, veteran craftsmen, verse 9. Men of Persia, they use hung shields. They talk about the way in which you go about your trade, your warfare, your strategic planning, how you market correctly, you watch where you're going for. He's using very interesting language there if you really look at it. Then he says, Tarshish did business with you, verse 12. Because of your great wealth of goods, they exchanged silver, iron, tin, and lead for your merchandise. I mean, that's business. We're talking about the business world. And what is it that's doing all of this? If it wasn't for the ships. Now, let's listen to what God says as he goes on. He talks about the different people that traded with you. Verse 17, Judah and Israel traded with you. You see, we have the world involved in this. I mean, let me put it this way. Do any of you have businesses which you only do for your church? Or anybody who comes and buys your merchandise, even if he's an atheist, will you sell it to him? There's no respect of person when it comes to business. It's the color of the money that counts. You understand? That's what we talk like. This is all of it there. It talks about Arabia. I mean, it talks about the Greeks. It talks about the Sheba and Ramah traded with you. He goes right on. Then he says in verse 25, the ships of Tarshish serve you as carriers for your wares. Now he's talking. He's saying, I'm talking about your ships. You are dependent on your ships for trade. You are filled with heavy cargo in the heart of the sea. Your oarsmen are like, take you out to the high seas, and it goes on. Your wealth of merchandise. He talks about all of that. Then he says, and I want you to look at this. They will raise their voices, verse 30, and cry bitterly over you. They will sprinkle dust on their heads and roll in ashes. Now they will sprinkle dust on the heads and roll in ashes. That's a sign of mourning. And you only put dust on your head and ashes on you when you were mourning a death.
Yeah, people committed suicide at Wall Street.
Hang on, we're coming to all of this still. They will shave their heads because of you, and they will put on sackcloth. Sackcloth was the garment worn by dead people. They will weep over you with anguish of soul and with bitter mourning, and they will wail and mourn over you. They will take up a lament concerning you. You who was ever silenced like Tyre surrounded by the sea. You know, we are going to be shattered by organizations that are just going to close down. And lots of people are going to stand and put ashes and things because the business that they relied on is gone. Now you might, if you really go into it, you will find it's God who says, I challenge you. I'm challenging you. Now I want you to notice, just quickly to close off this section, and I really mean this sincerely, but go with me to Revelation chapter 18. And the word counsels me that we are to come out of Babylon. Now, and the word Babylon actually means world in this particular case, but a world of confusion. And I want you to know that God is very particular about the way in which you trade in business, the way in which we actually go about business. If you read the book of Proverbs, I just want to show you something that you will find quite interesting. Proverbs chapter 11 verse 1 says, Proverbs 11 verse 1, just turn with me to that. I want you to notice what God feels about scales. Tony, you've got it, verse 1.
The Lord abhors dishonest scales. But accurate weights are his delight.
Okay, let's just stop there. He says, what does he hate?
Dishonest.
Dishonest trade. You know, sometimes, you know what they used to do in the olden days? They used to have different kinds of weights. And if a person came that was kind of rich, they put a kind of heavier weight or whatever and sold him less. They were dishonest. And I'm telling you this, it's so that our world is corrupt when it comes to commerce and trade at the present moment. And God is going to challenge that because he does not like it. And I want to tell you something, the world that has succeeded up to now, you know, I can show you, it says there in Revelation 18, it carries on, you know, I want you to read with me. It says there in verse 2, fallen, fallen is Babylon. Now it's strange, it doesn't say fallen is Babylon, it says fallen, fallen is Babylon, which means that Babylon previously has fell, but is going to fall again. Now, where does Babylon fall? Prior to this, Revelation 14, it says there that Babylon has fallen. It says there in verse 8, the second angel followed out and said, fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great, which made all nations drink of the wine. It's fallen, fallen. So somewhere it's already fallen, but the way in which it fell, it's going to fall again. Now listen to the people that are trading there. Then I heard, God says in verse 4, then I heard a voice from heaven saying, then it says here, fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. She has become a home of demons, a haunt for every evil spirit. That means she's not trading well anymore. The world is corrupt. A haunt for every unclean and detestable bird, for all the nations, it doesn't say some, for all the nations have drunk the maddening wine of her adulteries. That means they've become involved in a corrupt trade. The kings of the earth committed adultery with her. The merchants of the earth grew rich from her extensive luxuries. Then I heard a voice from heaven saying, verse 4, come out of her, my people, that you be not partakers of her methods, her trade. Okay, then it says there, I want you just to move down. It says that in one day her plagues will overtake her, death and mourning and famine. It talks about trade. And then it says in verse 9, when the kings of the earth who committed adultery with her shared in her luxury see the smoke of her burning, they will weep and mourn over her. What did we just read about in Tyre? They wept and mourned. Now, I want to tell you something. One of the problems in our world today is how do you go about business when the people that you're trading with are corrupt, first of all? I mean, how do you actually get business nowadays without corruption, without paying a bribe? I know of a friend of mine who actually lost millions. He in the end emigrated to Australia because he just couldn't handle it anymore. He had a meeting with Julius Malema at a restaurant in Umhlanga, where he was going, and Julius Malema there was a particular trade on the table, and the first thing Julius Malema was asked, what are you giving me? So he said, what do you mean, what am I giving you? He says, well, in order for you to have this, you must give me something. So he says, but how can we trade like that? He says, well, the one who gives me the most is the one who gets it. And I mean, if you look at the world nowadays, I'm telling you, it's terrible. Try and do business now. It's hard, but it's still possible. So I want you to see that God is going to go against this. And I want to tell you, already I see in the world, already I see that this is already happening. Companies are folding. You know, people don't like the concept of BEE. My wife does BEE. She's a specialist in that field. And the concept is brilliant. But the problem is for everybody. But the problem is that not everybody is listening to it. And the ones who are listening are the ones who are taking flack. And it's hard to be BEE compliant. Okay. So I want you to recognize there's going to be an attack on your business. There's going to be an attack, and the purpose of the attack is to find out, are you trading fairly? Is God still the person that you give accountability to? And if you can't trade fairly, I'm telling you something, gentlemen, it's time to stop trading then. If you can't trade fairly, it's time to stop trading. Or rather find people who you can trade fairly with. Okay, so trumpet number 2 is already on the process. Are you affected by it already? Now, trumpet number 3 will be the one we're looking at next week. Okay, trumpet number 3. This is I've just been very quick in explaining it, but I can give it in greater detail. Okay, let's finish off there.